Hello, everyone out there in podcast world. Hope you're having a wonderful day. You are listening to or watching Service Business Mastery podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Tersh Blissett. Josh is actually at a training in Las Vegas today, a quote unquote air quote training in Las Vegas. But he's out there doing some learning himself. A lot of times we go to these events and it's work for us because we're just running around getting interviews and talking to people, networking. And he actually took some time to go to an event to learn. So that's really cool. Kudos to Josh for doing that. I'm super excited to have Corey Berrier on the show today. We're going to talk AI. If you know me, you know that I love talking AI and automation. And Corey does a lot of that. He does a lot of automation and sales in service businesses. So we're going to talk about that and how you can make your business grow, embracing AI for growth. And really, we're going to talk about not getting left behind over the next 12 months or so. Things are coming out that are really going to change the way the industries just operate and marketing and in general. And Corey's goal is he just doesn't want people to get left behind because you're intimidated by AI at this point. So I'm super excited to have Corey on the show, and I'm super excited to talk about AI as always. So with that being said, a huge shout out to everyone who makes this episode possible. Upfrog, Sarah, Emerson, and Company Cam. I have a quick introduction for them later on in the show, and but without them, this episode wouldn't be possible. But and also a lot of what we're going to be talking about includes these companies as well. So I'm excited to talk about them throughout the episode. With that being said, let's get started with today's show.
Are you looking for valuable business advice to reach that 7-figure revenue mark? Do you want actionable tips to properly navigate through every business challenge you encounter along the way? Let Tersh Blissett and Josh Crouch be your guide in getting you to the top here at Service Business Mastery. Tune in as they sit down with world-renowned authors in business, leadership, and personal growth who share valuable insights about management, marketing, pricing, human resources, and so much more. Let their nuggets of wisdom gold guide you in owning a thriving, profitable, and ever-growing business. Here are your hosts, Tersh and Josh.
Hey, Corey, welcome to the show.
What's up, brother? How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic.
Cool deal. So for those who don't know who you are, can you do a quick introduction of yourself?
Sure. So my name is Corey Berrier. I host a podcast, Successful Life Podcast. I'm an author, 9 Simple Steps to Sell More Shit. And I work with the home services industry. I coach guys on sales, service technicians, CSRs. I've been working with salespeople forever. But recently, I've been neck deep in artificial intelligence, which I'm super excited to talk about.
That's exciting. If you haven't heard anything about AI or artificial intelligence, machine learning in general, your head's been under a rock. If you haven't heard the words Chat GPT, you haven't been paying attention to anything, especially within the trades. How do you foresee the trades changing over the next 12 months or so?
Well, I think it depends. I think it depends on whether companies get on board or not.
Yeah.
I think it's going to change for a lot of people for the positive. I think it's going to change for a lot of people for the negative, probably more for the negative than the positive, unfortunately, because a lot of people are scared of AI. A lot of people think that, robots are going to take over and kill us all. Right. But that's just not the case. However, the fact of the matter is AI is it can do jobs smarter and more efficiently than a lot of human beings. Now, I'm not saying AI is going to replace a bunch of people. It will replace some, but it's not going to replace everybody. Where I think it's important that people pay attention is there's ways that you could automate your HVAC system. Like there's automations out there that can predictively, it's called predictive analytics, It can tell you before that unit's going to break down. It can tell you when the unit needs to be serviced. There's a million different things. And so it's stuff like that I think people really should be interested in. Now, the other side of that is, you mentioned ChatGPT. Like, ChatGPT's been out for a couple of months now, not a couple of months, 7 months now. About as long as I've been working in this, to be honest with you. That's kind of what got me rolling, because I realized that I have ADHD. So, it's easier for me to explain to you after I put something in ChatGPT than it is sometimes for me to just explain it to you, period. Right? Because I may leave out a word, or I may just, go off into left field. And so, I use it for email. I use it for a lot of things, but on a granular level, if you've not heard about ChatGPT, you probably are under a rock, but you should log into it. You should start using it. And the last thing I'll say about chat is that, it's about the input. It's about how you ask it the questions. Sometimes it needs to be specific. Sometimes it doesn't. But look, if you ask it the right questions, the chances of you getting a positive outcome are far greater than you getting a negative outcome.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. The whole prompt engineering concept and learning how to create the proper prompt, that kind of took me for a whirlwind a little while when I was first trying to learn chat. And now it's like I can look at a prompt and say, well, that's not going to be successful, or that's going to give you very vague response or answer to your question that you have. And so, kind of like off the top of your head, this is a very difficult question for me to answer, so I don't expect you to answer this in very with a perfect list, because we didn't talk about this before. But could you name some things that you use, like specifically and how you do it with Chat GPT? Like I can say, I built something with Zapier where every email that comes into me, as long as it filtered out the unsubscribes, so as long as it doesn't say unsubscribe or manage your email notifications or manage your email, then Chat or Zapier automatically creates a draft using chat. So it sends that whole email to Chat GPT and then responds with a draft and saves it as a saved draft in your emails. So then every single email that I have instantly, I can look at the email and Chat's already created an auto response for me. There's times where I've had to go in and change it, but a lot of times the reply to the email is better worded than the way that I would word it. And I have some where whenever I have a certain tag that I use for people who want to be a guest on the podcast, I can tag them, and then Chat has a prompt that is dedicated towards those people. And so then the response comes back different than just a generic response for those people. How are some ways that you use Chat?
So I use Chat a million different ways. The first way I would say is, like, if you know how to, I built a prompt way back, right? You prompt base, everybody's pretty familiar with prompt base at this point. Prompt base has a million different, it's probably what you were referring to when you're saying, well, I can look at this and tell if it's going to work or not. So I reversed engineered I had no idea how to do this stuff. So I just reversed engineered and created one for like a sales coach. So it would answer sales questions. Yeah, it worked okay. I mean, I'm not a prompt engineer, so it worked okay. But one of the biggest ways that I use it is I have a bunch of plugins, right? And because I've been in this community and I've dug so deep into this, I have plugins that, for example, I've got one that's got like 3,800 prompts on it, right? 3,800 prompts of anything that you could possibly imagine, right?
That's a lot.
It's a lot. Like, to write a book in one word. Not that anybody on here necessarily would want to do that, but maybe. Right. It's also got, it's got marketing stuff on it. Now, I'm not saying that you could build out your whole marketing campaign, but look, if you're a $1 to $2 million company and you're not paying a marketing company, dude, this is a great choice for you to use, because Absolutely. The chances of you producing something as good as what Chat will produce is probably not likely.
Right.
I mean,
Now, are you finding that chat 3.5 or 4 is better for some of the stuff? Because 4 was going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread, but then come to find out 4, you can't have 4 create a character, so you can't tell a that chat GPT 4.0, hey, pretend you're a lawyer and write up this document, because it doesn't compute that way. Whereas 3.5, you could tell it that, and then all of a sudden it starts using lawyer lingo and stuff. And so like I was like super excited about 4 coming out and everything. And 4 is extremely powerful in its own way. But then I was like, well, I wanted this like cheery attitude and all this other stuff, and it's in like snarky attitude almost is what I wanted. And that didn't get that with 4. Did you find the same thing, or what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I'll be honest with you, dude. This sounds so ridiculous and like I'm completely spoiled, but the fact that matter is slow. It's too slow for me. Like I don't have the patience to sit there after working with 3.5. Now I will tell you, one of the plugins that I have, it does work on that. Now I don't know about asking it if you're a lawyer or asking it if you're whatever. Right. I'm not sure about that necessarily because I don't know if I plugged it in 4 or if I have, I just forgotten.
Yeah,
but this extension that I have, it'll give you the different like sarcastic or serious or whatever. It's a whole list of stuff. So
I think I have that same one. That's and you can go into weeds with that. That's the other problem that I have with having ADD is like all of a sudden I'm like, oh, that's cool. It's sarcastic, or it's humorous, and then friendly, and so, or humorous and stern, and I'm like, now let me try this. Now let me try this. And then all of a sudden, 2 hours later, I still haven't created the 600 word blog post or whatever that I wanted to, or email response or whatever it was that I was doing. I'm just over here jerking around with different responses that it's given me. And so then it's, I mean, the problem with ADD, and a lot of business owners have it, is it's not just you get distracted easy, you also get hyper focused on things, and you get into a rabbit hole where it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you don't realize you're still playing around with this crap. You know what I mean? So you have to learn how to put some time limits on your what you're doing as well. And oftentimes I forget to do that.
Dude, 100%. Because look, attention deficit disorder or hyperactivity disorder. And I talk about this in my book because it's interesting. I was diagnosed at like, I don't know, age 9. I'm 45. But until a couple of years ago, I didn't really understand. I've taken medicine forever, but I didn't really understand why I did the things that I did. Like, for example, everybody that's listening to this, if they're in home services, just about everybody can identify with this. How many times have you lost your AirPods, right? It is a nightmare, or your keys, or whatever it is. I didn't realize that that's just something we have to live with, right? Mm-hmm. That is just something that part of our brain, once we're finished with something, our brain says we're finished with it and we don't go back to it lots of times unless we have systems and processes in place.
So that's funny you mentioned that, because I was diagnosed as an adult with ADD, and as a child, I didn't know that I had ADD, but I knew that I needed to create processes or else I'd lose everything. And so like my kids don't have ADD, but they have the processes built, like all the processes are just nailed into their heads. Our keys go in one specific area. There's 4 rows of keys. Dad's keys go up here, mom's keys go here, and the kids' keys go down there. And the keys never go anywhere but there, because otherwise we lose them. AirPods, I have a spot for my AirPods. They're either in my pocket or they're in that spot. Otherwise, they get lost, because it has to be a process. Otherwise, everything is just complete disarray. And my kids are that same habit. Like their dirt bikes go a certain way. They know right where everything's at. And they know, like, because of the processes that I've built in place as a child, I did that. And once I was an adult and I got diagnosed with ADD, there was a lot of aha moments, like, oh, now I understand why I do the things that I do and why I was going crazy thinking this, that, and the other, is because I needed those processes put in place.
Right, exactly. And that, I'll tell you, that's one of the reasons that, I talk about follow-up a lot. And the reason I believe this 100% in my heart, the reason contractors struggle with follow-up is because it is so boring. It's repetitious, right? And we don't like boring stuff. We don't like doing stuff that doesn't light our brain up. And so, to your other point, Chat GPT is one of those things for me that lit my brain on fire, right? Like I was just buried in it. And you do lose track of time. But I'll tell you, I've mitigated losing stuff, and this is going to sound ridiculous, but I call it what you want. I figured out that I leave everything in this little, it looks like a fanny pack. I don't wear it like a fanny pack, but I carry it every single place that I go. And I did the calculations, and it saves me about 90 minutes a day looking for stuff.
Yeah. I carried my Merce around, my man purse.
Yeah.
A little backpack for that same exact reason. And then, I attribute it to having a tool bag. I've always had a tool bag. I was in the field, and I was super anal about my tools. Like every tool had a slot, and I could pick up my tool bag, and I knew if there was like a screwdriver missing or a nut driver missing, because everything had a spot and no trash went in my tool bag. And so same way with my Merce. Like I pick it up and, oh, my iPad's not in there. Like you could tell instantly it's something's missing out of it. And as long as everything has a spot, then you're not searching around for stuff. So anybody that's listening to this and you find yourself constantly searching for things, you might want to do something like that. Even if it's like a backpack or a little fanny pack, just carry it around with you, and you're not searching for things anymore. But you have to be very diligent to make sure that when you're finished with something, you put it back in that bag. Like, don't just set it on the counter and then think you're going to come back to it later, because you're not. It's not going to happen. Right. You need to put it right in the bag right then.
Yeah, and regardless if it's an inconvenience or not, you've got to put it back in the right place. Even if you just, and I do that a lot. I just have to force myself. Well, I have to force myself to do a lot of things I don't want to do, but that's one of those things. But then now I've trained myself. It's just like, it's just like anything else in life. If you want to get good at something, you've got to do it over and over the same way, and you get good at it, and it becomes natural.
So what would you say is your most used plugin that you use with AI? Because I have added, so recently I added in several of them. I'm looking at my Chat GPT right now, and my prompts are, hang on, okay, yeah, that's what I'm looking for right there. Browse with Bing is my most used one right now. I think that's been a cool one, because before Chat GPT couldn't browse websites. So now you can actually send it out and scrape all your competitors' data off their website using Bing. And I thought that was a really cool concept. What other plugins? Scraper, that's another one that scrapes URLs off there. But I don't, because I'm not the marketing guy, I don't know what to do with the information after I've scraped it. You know what I mean? I can nerd out on scraping data, but I don't know what to do with the data once I've scraped it. I think that's Zapier. Oh, that's Zapier is the other one. If you're ever curious about how to use Zapier, add the plugin, the Zapier plugin, and ask Chat a question, and it'll show you step by step how to build the Zap through Chat GPT. I thought that was the craziest thing, because there's so many times where I'm like reteaching myself about webhooks, And I'm like, oh man, every time I learn this, I learn it long enough to build the Zap and then I forget it. And having Chat GPT teach you exactly or show you exactly how to do step by step, I thought that was just an amazing concept, because there's so many times where I know you get asked this, I get asked this all the time, like, what do you automate in your business? Well, I have like 3,500 automations a month. Like, I don't remember all the automations that I do. I just have them. Every time a new client gets added to a CRM, it gets sent over to MailChimp. And then every month it automatically sends them an email reminder telling them to change their air filter. And it's got our logo at the top of it. Like, that's stuff that I set up a year ago and I've forgotten about it, and then people send me text messages. Hey, yeah, I appreciate the email reminder for sending changing out my air filter. I always forget to change my air filter the first of the month. It's like, oh, I forgot that we do that, so there's a ton of them. I actually need to create a list of them. Josh and I were talking about that. And Christopher Hughes, a buddy of mine, a really good friend of mine, he actually said, made a really good point. Chat GPT is like my new Google search bar when I'm looking for generic information. And that's so true. I believe that's the direction chat's going in. I believe that chat is going for me, I have different apps on my phone where like I ask those apps, their chat, basically Chat GPT apps. And I ask them questions before I even Google search something. And 9 times out of 10, they'll come back with a response that's close enough to exactly what I need. And I find myself having conversations like with our team, because a lot of people that listen to this know that we use Slack. We used to use Teams and we moved back to Slack. And there's sometimes where your text message conversations are not very personable, and they can be construed different ways. And so like I'll take and put my response into chat and say, make this friendly but stern. And then that comes out with a much friendlier conversation than what I was going to type into the response into Slack. And it's really helped out a lot in conversations as well too. I mean, and there's times where it doesn't work very well, but for the most part, it's funny because my wife will say, you put that in chat, didn't you? I was like, yeah, I did. Because that don't sound like you. That was way too friendly of a response.
Well, look, it sounds like you're a lot like me. Like, we're direct people. Like, we just give people really direct responses. And lots of times that could come across like you're being, jerk for sure. And so, but to answer your question, I would say I use a bunch of plugins, but the one I probably use the most is called AI RPM, which is the one that's got all the prompts in it, the one I get lost in. But then there's also web chat, right? It sounds like very similar to Bing.
Yeah.
And to Chris's point, I don't Google things anymore. I mean, unless I'm looking for a restaurant, that's about the degree of it. That's it.
That's true. How do you feel like Google has hurt from this? I mean, because they had to have, right? I mean,
well,
people quit searching. Yeah, I know. Yeah, right. So, I mean, they're coming out with their own, or they came out with their own that I haven't used much. But I feel like I feel like this is the beginning of a lot of change when it comes to Google, because on one hand, like I asked this to everybody that I talk to, so I'll ask you this: how do you feel Google will either penalize or accept or rank AI created blog posts?
Great question. I don't think they have. Look, Google is probably the most powerful thing on the planet, but think about how many people have put out AI generated content that are paying Google. There's no way they could penalize as many people now. Now, when it first came out, potentially, but right now it's so incredibly massive. They would destroy their customer base if they did that.
Yeah,
That's
I agree.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. So if you're listening to this, look, don't be afraid to use chat and use that information. I use it on, I use it on my website. I use it on anything publicly because, like you said before, or we both agree that it's going to sound better if I put it through chat than it will be if I say it.
Listen, so my about me, my bio of myself that I send out to people, because every time I go on a podcast, that most of the times they want a bio, a short bio of me. I thought I did a pretty good job with it. And my wife did it, a version of it. I did it. And we just kind of back and forth. We kind of made some tweaks to it. Well, I stuck that whole bio in there that we had been messing with for a couple of years off and on, just tweaking it, put it into Chat GPT, and it spit out in 30 seconds, just something that just put me to shame. I was like, dang, that just sounds way better, way easier to read. And like now I need to go through and find all my about me pages and update them to this new this what Chat GPT put out there, because it rolls off the tongue better, and it doesn't say anything different. It's just the way it's worded is better. And I think that that's one of the big things with chat is I struggle with copywriting because the type of person that I am. I'm a very direct and to the point person, like we mentioned earlier. So my perfect blog post is 100 words max, like max 100 words. If you could do it in 50 words, that's even better. Because I'm skimming whatever you have. So, but that's not every single person, and that's not what the algorithms want. So for me, I feel like I'm just adding a lot of BS and fluff to stuff and it shows whenever I'm writing that copy. So Chris said, but it's very generic sounding, no soul in the read. That's been my complaint. So that's the thing about it, Chris. And what he's talking about is Chris is mentioned in the live stream for anybody that's listening to this episode later on, that whenever Chat GPT creates something, it sounds very generic or no soul in the read. And that's what has been his complaint. What I would say is that has a lot to do with the prompt. If you can prompt it to make it sound different, and that's where my complaint with 4 is over 3.5. Like a lot of times I'm tempted to click 4 because I think 4 is better, but 3.5 is faster, and 3.5, you can make it so that it has soul. You can even say, write this so that it does not sound generic and so that it has soul in it. And it's going to come back with a completely different response than what it typically would, or what you've had in the past. And that's the thing, like, that I'm learning more and more about. Like, that's the tone and the writing style. So the one that I always use is friendly, or I don't always use it, but it's kind of my go-to, is friendly and conversational. So it's a very friendly tone, and the writing style is conversational. And then it comes across as a great, easy read whenever they're writing a 1,000-word blog post.
Yeah, I know. I agree with you. I think at first, and I think probably a lot of people right now are experiencing this, there's a level of inauthenticity that I think comes over our brains when we're plugging this stuff in, and it comes out so great and so easy to read. But I believe at this point, as I'm paying attention to people's posts, and like now I know, of course, if it's been written by chat, right? I know because there's certain things that you look for. And so people are warming up to the idea that this makes more sense. It makes more sense for my audience to hear what to get my point across. And it makes more sense time-wise. It makes a lot of sense no matter which way you slice it, to be honest with you. So if you do feel inauthentic about it, just get on the train, because everybody's going to be using it at some point for sure, if they're not already.
Yeah. Cool, Corey. Is there anything else? We could talk about this stuff for days, obviously. But I want to make sure that everybody knows your podcast and your book and everything that you offer to, not just all this stuff about AI?
Yeah. So I've been hosting Successful Life podcast since 2019. And it is centered around home services. I will tell you this, you'll find this funny. So I thought, well, talking about inauthentic, I have another podcast called AI Hacks Podcast that is completely digital, right? It doesn't have, I don't say a word in it.
Huh.
So what I do is I find, and this is a strategy that's been working recently, is I'll find like, I mix contractor stuff in there, but it's not really just for contractors. It's for the up-to-date like AI tools and stuff like that. So I'll go on and I will use Google for this one thing other than restaurants. Is I'll look up the 10 top tools that are going on right now outside the paid ads. And that's what I copy the stuff, I put it in chat, I maneuver it a little bit, and that's what the podcast is. It talks about the latest and greatest AI tools that are coming out. And it educates me on things that I don't know about. And then also, I'll be honest, when you listen to it, if I hadn't have told you that, you would have just thought that I just know how to talk really good. I mean, it's pretty crisp clear. And so, I would use 11 Labs is what I use for the voice synthesizer. And it is like you go in and train your voice and you do it several different times and it synthesizes the voice. It sounds pretty good. So my book is called 9 Simple Steps to Sell More Shit. It's what I base a lot of my coaching around, the 9 steps that I take people through. And the first one, I'll just say this really quick, is it starts out with confidence. I believe that without confidence, you can't sell anything. And I believe that if you don't believe in what you're selling, then you're going to have a hard time. And so just for that reason, it's a short read. It's for people like me and you who don't want to read a big, super long book. And I would encourage people to pick that up, not because I make a bunch of money on it, but just because I think it'll help you. Because I don't make much money on it. I'll be honest with you. Books are not a cash cow, that's for sure.
It's not how you get rich.
No, sir. But it is pretty cool.
Man, well, I appreciate you hanging out with us and chatting about AI, and I look forward to having you back on and talking more about it. I'm excited to see how things are progressing, and if you need any help with AI, don't hesitate to reach out to Corey. I know he's got tons of knowledge and experience, and he's constantly learning more and sharing more about it. So don't hesitate to reach out to him or myself. And with that being said, I really appreciate you coming and hanging out with me today, Corey.
No problem. Thank you, brother.
Absolutely. I look forward to talking to everybody again later. We have another episode later this afternoon. But other than that, I hope you have a safe and wonderful week until we talk again next time. We'll see you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Service Business Mastery. Now that you are equipped with essential business advice from this impactful conversation, you are one step closer to becoming the successful owner of your dreams. If this episode has been helpful to your business journey, don't forget to subscribe to the show, leave a rating, and share it with other owners as well. Visit servicebusinessmastery.com to learn more.